and we'll admit everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, YouTube, and welcome back to our last meeting with and the. We'll admit everyone. Oh, there we go. Turn that off. There we go. This is our last meeting, but maybe not. I sent Jenny an email. I didn't get an email back.
I did send you an email back.
Oh, did you send an answer back?
Great idea. Yes.
Okay, good. So this is our last meeting. We're on the last chapter, the last 6 pages of the Perfume of Silence, as most of you know. And thank you for being here. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you all for continuing to be part of this. I had an idea this morning that what if we had one more meeting next week, or it could be 2 weeks out, where we take the most potent, best pieces, little pieces of content from the book, and we just talk about it. We just riff, and it could be, we won't make it we'll make it at 12 Eastern, but maybe it'll go 75 minutes instead of 60, and we'll just have fun with it. So we're going to do that. I think did you say yes?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay. So we're going to do that, and we'll send an invitation out that we'll do that, and that will be I think that will put the icing on the cake. And I have absolutely loved this book, The Perfume of Silence. And as most of you know, Rupert was the guy who put this together for Francis many years ago. It's still potent, it's still relevant. And in fact, Francis is, as we all know, he was with us a few weeks ago, and many of us here watch him and visit him regularly, especially Jenny. And I just interviewed Rupert just 15 minutes ago. I got off a call. We did a 45-minute interview where I interviewed him for the conference in a personal interview. So we find out more details about Rupert's personal life. I just asked him if he would spend some time just talking about some of that. And that's going to be available for the conference. And I'm doing it with all 23 speakers at the conference, and both musicians. Krishna Das is one of our musicians, and Jackie Greggs is one of our musicians. I'll be doing it with all 25. And it was just so great. Rupert and Ellen Emmett, Rupert's wife, both have such a love for Francis, and they both had their awakening experiences in the presence of Francis' teachings. So it's really appropriate that we, this has been an amazing 30 weeks together. And I just want to say thank you for being part of it. This has been the joy of my weekly. This hasn't been work. It never is. It's just it's fun and it's fresh. And thank you all for being part of it. I just let a bunch of people in that were waiting while I was talking, and welcome everyone to almost our last. I just mentioned you missed it, but we're going to have one more meeting. I don't know, Jenny, do you want to have it next week, or do you want to make it 2 weeks out? And we also want all of you to participate. If you have favorite little potent things, ahas that you noticed, send it to billfreeonline@gmail.com, and just that you'd like to, this was like the coolest for you, or this was the best, and we'll try to cover them all. And if you want to come on and talk about it, we'll, give you the mic, and we'll just have fun with it. Jenny, where would you like to start this week?
Well, I think maybe where we finished, so that was on page 221, well, wasn't it? And the question, the sun is always shining, but the clouds obscure it. And Francis says that the cloud is the thought that I am a person. The biggest cloud of all is the thought that I am a person who is free from the cloud. But it's also a cloud to think that I am a person who is bound by the cloud. And that's it's a lovely way of putting it, both sides. of I am a person. And the rest of this answer is just, it has the feeling of poetry, doesn't it? He says we're here to experience love, which is the experience that what we are isn't personal. All the different bodies and minds that appear are just one thing. We call that consciousness.
Yes. Yes. We are here for one single purpose, which is to experience love. And the thing I mean, and it's interesting that we have to let go of the idea that we're the body to experience what the body loves most, which is love.
Yes. Mm.
Right? We have this idea that the emotional system and the response system of the experience that we either felt from love or we felt a lack of love is the thing that that we want the most, and then we identify it that that's actually what we are.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing.
And
Well,
again, he emphasizes not knowing and points out how living in not knowing is living in just the amazement that I'm here and experiencing. It is lovely.
yes, yes. And just a little bit down on that, on the second paragraph, or from what I just read, we are here for one single purpose. He says, that which is seeing and understanding these words right this moment is not personal. So we just pause and take that in. That which is seeing the understanding and understanding these words is not the personal self.
Yes. Yeah.
It's consciousness, it's love, it's presence, which is having this experience.
Yes. Yeah.
He
And
says, go ahead.
and the purpose of his meetings, he says, is to keep turning our attention away from objects and towards that presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the pull. I saw that when I read that, I went, oh, that's why we love to have these meetings, these book study. I mean, I think these are like many. They're like satsang meetings where we're discussing the truth, the essence of our identity.
Yes. Yeah.
He says each time. He says, however, oh, and then he talks about we are constantly being reminded of the source in these meetings. It's a reminder of source, of presence. He says we might wonder how it is possible to turn our attention towards something that is invisible, inconceivable, and incomprehensible. However, each time we withdraw the focus of our attention from objects, we are in fact turning towards the source, and each time we do this, we vanish as a person.
Yes. And he talks about the causeless joy and that everything we've felt to be solid, seeming more transparent. He often says things like the world is our body, so everything around us becomes much more transparent.
Yeah. Well, that's I think that's I mean the pull of this of truth becomes more and more delicious.
Yes,
And
yes,
it becomes more and more intoxicating, but in a way that allows you to be alert and present at the same time.
yes, yeah,
Yeah. He says every time we are reminded of this unknown direction. We look towards the source and we vanish into it. We are taken by it. Then the mind arises again, the old habit of focusing exclusively on objects, and we seem to forget until the nostalgia returns and we are taken again. When this happens enough, life begins to change for us.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, and that's interesting because life begins to change, which and it changes of its own, right? Because we're not making choices. As we give our attention to these ideas, the ideas become the primary attention. That's where the personal self identity is no longer resisting the experiences, so we're no longer suffering the experience.
Yes, I think of it as kind of the pattern of the universe subtly changing. You introduce something new like this teaching into the pattern, which is what you are, because that's all any of us are. And there's a subtle change, like if you drop a little bit of coloured dye into water, and you can see the ripples. You can see a coloured effect, and there's a change in the water. So it's beautiful. It's not something we have to do. It's just happens, as you said.
Yeah. Yes, and I can see why these words or the words of Rupert or Jean Klein or other great teachers, there's so many out there. I have focused on Rupert since I found Rupert because he's it just was an instant love for his words, for what he was pointing to. And I also love Muji. Muji is a friend of mine, and I love his content of satsangs. So it's the truth. The truth it just is, and it pulls you to itself.
Yes, expressed in so many different ways, but ultimately it's always the same.
Yeah. There's the last paragraph in that section. It's a little bit italicized, I think. He says, the only thing, oh, and this is what you were saying. This is great. The only thing that we need to remember is, I don't know.
Yes.
Nobody knows. I am here sitting in a chair like someone who knows, but I don't know.
Yes.
It just happens. I don't know how. Every time it happens, I am amazed. I mean, it's just so great to see that statement from Francis. I mean, even though this was over 10 years ago that he wrote these words, it took, I think, 3 years. Wasn't it about 10 years ago that this book was published?
I
Or
think
was it?
something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the ideas are still great. He's expanded, all of it. You don't just stop at the end of putting essays or meetings to a book. Francis him, and Rupert have both expanded since I've known them.
Yes. Yes. There's always something new. Every satsang of Francis I go to, there's something completely new and some new analogy that he gives, often very humorous.
Yeah. Well, this is an open meeting, an open dialogue. If anyone has any comments or questions, and you would like to use the hand raise function and say something, please do that. Feel free to be able to do that, and we welcome your comments or questions. Rick always has something interesting to say. Thank you, Rick, for your engagement every week. He says in the chat here, God awareness is analogous to a child with only two toys, playmates, a smudgeless mirror to experience facets, reflections of itself, and two, a cloaking device to occasionally provide the appearance of absence. That's pretty good, Rick. Like that. Thank you for that. Funny too. Uh, and welcoming. Okay, so let's get to welcoming, I think, when we get further in. Is that all right with you?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll wait till we get further in. I think that's a few pages in. And then let's see. People are still coming in the room. Welcome if you're just getting here. We're on our last book study, but it's not the last one because we're going to have one more meeting. Keep your eyes open for an email inviting you to the one more meeting. And just watch the beginning of this replay and you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't want to say it 3 or 4 times. I talk about having one more meeting, and you'll see what I mean on that. And let's see, Jenny, let's look at the next question. This afternoon, I thought that I didn't know that which is unknowable, and then I realized that this can't be true. It's just words.
Yes, and he quotes Parmenides, being is and not being is not. And there's a very similar, but I think slightly easier to understand quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which he also gives sometimes. That which is not never comes into being, and that which is never ceases to be. And that which is not is objects as separate objects from the self, and that which is means the self never ceases to be. And he uses, Francis nowadays often uses the word reality as a synonym for being. And he says the most important recognition is that there is only one reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. And Parmen, how do you say that name? Parmenides?
Parmenides, yes, it's one of the early Greek philosophers. Francis translated a bit of Parmenides. There's not much that's surviving of Parmenides, very very small amount, but what there is lovely.
Okay, I've heard that. I've heard Rupert use that quote, I think.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah, I think
He
so.
will have got it from Francis because Francis translated it from the Greek.
Oh,
And
okay.
his own translation, because obviously if you really understand what a sage is getting at, then you can translate it better.
Right, right. I had such a great interview with Rupert a little while ago, and in that interview, I just was listening to a podcast. If anyone here listens to Rupert's podcast, go to Spotify. If you want to hear his podcast, go to Spotify and look up Rupert Spira's podcast. Listen to the podcast number 30. I mean, you can go and listen to 10 and you can hear Jenny interviewing Rupert and she does a great interview of Rupert on podcast number 10. But number 30, one that he recently did with Tom Campbell, he was hosted by Simon Mundy, is fantastic. You don't want to miss that. If you get a chance to listen, it will be worth its weight in gold for you. The next question, it says, it seems that the only thing we can do is polish the mirror. Is this done by not knowing?
And of course, polishing sort of sounds a bit like something we have to actually do. And so Francis says instead of trying to maintain an attitude of not knowing, it'd be simpler to understand that we cannot know anything, that we don't have to maintain any attitude. And I remembered the first question I ever asked Francis was at your conference, Bill, and I asked about not knowing, and he said it means to not know what you are. And that's really what he's saying here. He says that we are that which knows, but which is itself unknowable. To know that which knows is not knowledge of an object.
Okay, that sounds kind of tricky.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit tricky because we are that which knows, but which is itself unknowable.
Yeah.
Isn't being aware of being aware a knowing experience?
Not really. It's a being experience rather than a knowing experience. I would say knowing always to me seems to imply an object. So we are that which knows. We can know objects because those are manifestations of awareness. But that which knows is itself unknowable. That which we are is unknowable. It's beautiful, and it's a beautiful expression because it actually takes you back to that not knowing what I am, which is lovely.
So the knowing of this to know thyself, is that a lower level understanding to know thyself?
Well, I think I mean that originally comes from Plato. I assume originally, maybe it's earlier. Plato quoting Socrates, and I think what was meant there was a different kind of knowing, in a way to know that which we are not. So people think they know themselves, but to really know that what you are is unknowable is something different.
Well done, Jenny. I'm impressed. Thank you for
There
those
was
answers.
there was so often we hear people asserting spiritual facts which are really just beliefs, and ultimately we need to get behind all of the beliefs that we have. And there was a lovely discussion on I wrote it down on the practical implications of this in Francis's recent online retreat, and he said what is important is that we have to be open to be wrong about everything except that which we are absolutely certain of. And there are not too many things that we can be absolutely certain of, and the rest be about as certain about it as you are about the stock market, which is obviously not too certain.
Right.
And we can have a good idea about the stock market and what it's going to do if we study that sort of thing, but we can never be absolutely certain. So it's very tiny, the things that we can be absolutely certain about. The sort of things he mentions is that we are that which is aware of the reality, which is aware of our experience, which knows our experience,
Yes.
or there is only one reality. After some contemplation, we can be absolutely certain of that. There is something rather than nothing. We can write immediately that is obvious to us.
Yeah.
There is something rather than nothing. So those sorts of things, but anything to do with objects, we can never really be certain about.
Yeah. I did like the distinction that you made between knowing and being, because being feels more absolute.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is. It's being, reality. Either word will do, and there's nowhere further back to go from that.
Right. Yeah. There's a Zachary made a beautiful statement. He says, like the eye that sees but never sees itself.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Are there any questions that we need to pick up here? Thank you for those beautiful words, Rick. Delighted to join you in all this wonderful experience. Thank you. The stock market goes up, the market goes down. That's all we can be sure of. Yeah, right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's for sure. Not knowing, I make the distinction between knowing conceptually, objectively, versus knowing on a noumenal level. When, let's see, I lost it. Where'd it go? When he reiterates the importance of not knowing, he's referring to the noumenal. Don't try to put within a phenomenal box. Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, Rick. And we'll carry on. Where did we leave off here? Let's see. Oh, where Francis was amazed at the only thing we need to remember is I don't know.
Yes.
So just I know nothing. Remember that the Hogan's Heroes, Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing. Okay. This afternoon, I thought that I didn't know that which is unknowable. And then I realized that this can't be true. It's just words.
I think that was the one we were just covering, wasn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what we did. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. And the next one was it seems that the only thing we can do is polish the mirror.
Oh,
Is
that's right.
is this done by not knowing? And then we did a little bit of that. And then the one after that was it seems that the job of the mind is to know, and yet it cannot. And he says all the mind has to do is to get out of the way.
Yes, yes. Oh,
Yes,
he gave that great he gave that great story of the Zen, the patriarch Zen story. And then at the end, he said, "So no polishing, but if you want to polish, that's fine." So he
yes.
yeah, he got to that story where the two were competing sort of for the position of the Zen, and the one who did nothing was the winner. Was the one who got it right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So we just need to be present and do nothing and be.
Yes, and to understand that there is no personal entity that can do anything or that does do anything.
Yes, yes. So Rosalind has her hand up. Hi, Rosalind. Good to see you. You want to unmute your mic? Thank you.
Thank you. I have so much appreciation, like everybody here, for what you've done for us. I had a very clear realization last time, Jenny, when you clarified something I heard in 1995. I heard from Ramesh Balsekar that it feels the same when the separate self says, get a glass of water. And when you're being moved by spirit or whatever word you want to use, to get a glass of water. And you clarified last week that that is only because if there's an identification left with the separate self. Otherwise, they're not the same. It feels different. And that was revealed to me all week with more and more clarity. I have a question about the concession to the separate self and the limitation of language. I was looking at that video that you shared, Jenny, on Facebook. I guess it was a satsang, I'm not sure which form, where Francis says, if you want chocolate, you can choose the chocolate or not choose the chocolate, but you get the experience of the chocolate. So going back to using the word choose is a little confusing. And sometimes I think, like Bill said earlier today, there are different levels, and the language kind of the concession to the different levels. But then he went on to confuse me even more. He said, there's a payoff to the chocolate. You enjoy the chocolate, you get the experience of the chocolate. But then he said, with ignorance, there's no payoff. And here's my confusion. If I think setting goals that's ignorance. I'm going to get things in the world. I'm going to set goals, and that's where my happiness is going to lie. That's ignorance, but it seems like it has the same payoff as chocolate. So
Right.
I didn't understand.
Yes. Okay.
You were referring to that videotape. So
yes,
I wonder if you could clarify. And is it just concessions to the separate self that we're speaking of at these different levels?
No, Francis doesn't tend to make many concessions to the separate self. He will if it seems necessary for a questioner, but not very often. And when he says you, he's saying you awareness. So you awareness can choose chocolate.
Oh.
And they're choosing chocolate because of the laws of the universe, which are the laws of awareness, will have some benefits. I mean, I can't remember what it is, the endorphins that it increases or something. It might also eventually make you overweight if you have too much of it, I guess. That's another law of the universe. That's another consequence. But all of that is going on in awareness, and he's referring to you awareness. And so people very often ask exactly the sort of question that you've asked, and that's what he always says. No, I was referring to you awareness. Now, about setting goals, there's it's fine. It's fine to set goals, and we do set goals. If we're working in a business, then sometimes our employer expects us to set goals and then meet goals and all of that sort of thing. And that's fine. It's something that the mind does. We allow it to do it. It's when we identify the achievement of those goals with happiness, then that's what's ignorant. That's where ignorance lies. So fine, have set goals. Maybe a goal. I need to get healthier, so I'm going to walk 5 miles every day. That's a goal, and maybe you achieve it, maybe you don't achieve it. But if you think your happiness is going to be dependent on your achieving of that goal, then no, it's not, because happiness is like the blue sky. It's the ignorance is the clouds that come across the blue sky. The blue sky is always there, even when there are clouds.
That's so beautiful. And then can you clarify his use of the word choice when he's so clear that we're not the chooser?
Yes, again, it's he talks about
you
awareness choosing. Yes, you the totality chooses. The word choose is is a little bit of a concession, not to the separate self, but to language, because it's the way we think. We think of choice, but choice actually implies time. So when I challenged him on his phrase "you awareness choose," he said, "Well, no." You're right. Nothing. There is no real chooser. It just happens. It's manifest. It's creativity. Was what he said. But it's very hard to speak in language which is absolutely accurate. I think Francis does an absolutely brilliant job of it, certainly a lot better than I could ever do. But
Thank you.
it is
You put
hard.
together so much for me. Thank you. Yeah.
Good.
And thank you, Bill. Your questions
you.
are always amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great questions, Rosalind. Oh my God. And Jenny, I used to think you were Rupert in a female body. Now I think you're Francis in a female body. Oh my God. So clear.
We're all one. We're all one
Yes,
body, the
yes.
universal body of Bill.
Of course. Of course. Well, what's interesting in that dialogue is that how fast, I mean, just based on Rosalind's question, which is all of our question, we often all have that same subtle body-mind identity, and how fast the body-mind captures or takes hostage that experience and says, "I did that. That's me."
Yes.
That asked that question. That question's coming from personal self. How fast that happens. Thank you both. That was a great dialogue right there. Let's see, where are we? Once it has fully, there's a question, and let's see, we only have about 20 plus minutes left. We're not going to finish this. Maybe we should go to 225, page 225.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a question there that says, we didn't have to remember in order simply to be, and yet there is a flavor of remembering in this being. Is this some higher memory? I love his answer. Oh my God.
Oh, it's wonderful, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
The distinction between memory and remembrance. And memory referring to the past and to objects, and remembrance referring to the timeless and to the subject of experience.
Yes, yes. And the remembrance versus the objects versus subjects.
Yes.
The subject of experience, right.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yes.
And let's see, is there anything you picked up on the next question?
Right. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, what that song is about.
Yes. Yes. It's he says it's not about exchanging concepts, but about dancing on the cable. He refers to this tightrope walker dancing on the cable. Once we're on the cable, there's no disciple or no teacher, there's only dancing. So it's very, very beautiful. All the watching bystanders are also dancing with us. The satsang is an art form, how to dance spontaneously with inspiration. And there's a very close connection with openness there, being open to anything and everything, and the art of not expecting.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Just really great. I love it. And we have a couple of Rick, great sitcom, Hogan's Heroes. You're aging yourself. Yeah. Well, look at Francis Lucille. That guy, is he 77?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, he's 10 years older than me. I'm a young guy. Look at him. I mean, he doesn't look like he's going to stop anytime soon. It might be the tennis. Uh, don't do more of what makes you happy. Instead, be happy and then do more, and then do. Thank you, Doug. Jim said, then he aimed and shot an arrow into the ocean and said, bullseye. What was that about? I must have missed something.
I think I must have missed it too.
Francis talks on this on YouTube, 8721, universal yes. The levels we talk about is the awareness of objects, yet Francis is speaking on awareness consciousness. There is only one, no levels. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Barbara. Totally. And Rana, thank you for being lived. I've totally seen that in your life, and it's a inspiration to see it expressed through you. Yes. And let's see. Where are we?
I think we should go on to this, the questions about boredom. There was quite a lot on that, and I think there's some important teachings there.
What page is that?
So the 226.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, I find that I try to get away from the quietness in meditation. I get bored and I don't know how to welcome it. There's no juice there. And he suggests taking a step back and becoming interested in the feeling of boredom itself. And when we do that, then it becomes apparent that boredom is just a bodily sensation, which we don't particularly like, and so we can see that we're trying to get away from it. But once we've seen it for what it is, then it loses its power, and we stop trying to escape from it through thinking. And then right. the next question said, is it boredom that compels me to seek the truth? And he says it's well yes, it's an invitation from God and a great opportunity. I like that answer.
Yes. For me, I don't know about most of you, but for me, the word God is taking on a new identity. Even the word God has lost its separateness, its separate flavoring. It feels like I can accept what God is more and more as I go deeper in these ideas.
Yes, God as the totality.
Yes.
Yeah.
This podcast I was talking about with Tom Campbell and Rupert uses consciousness as he calls it information. He totally gives it a new name. Consciousness or awareness or God is just information happening, always happening, and these bodysuits are the avatars. It's a fascinating podcast. You probably want to listen to it. It's really great. The next question is that I know there is no real juice in objects, but there is still the desire for juice.
Yes, and he says that the problem is searching for a happy state rather than searching for the truth. But there's part of this answer which I think is really important, and it relates to a mistake I made really up until I came to Francis's teaching. And I know many other people have made the same mistake, and that's to think that welcoming feelings requires giving them special attention and focusing on them. So what I used to do is I used to deliberately sit with the uncomfortable feelings. I'm going to sit with you for as long as I can. I bring them close, try to encourage them to expand and fill the whole space and so on. But what Francis taught me is that that's quite the wrong approach, that welcoming is actually about welcoming the totality, that there's more arising in awareness than the uncomfortable feeling, and we need to welcome all of it equally. And that's really what he explains in this answer. He says, welcoming is not simply welcoming the boredom, it is welcoming the totality of the situation. Boredom is only one tree in the landscape. Don't focus on it. Be open to everything else. At some point, the boredom will recede into the background and something else will come to the foreground. On the other hand, the desire to get rid of boredom actually maintains it in the foreground as a problem. And the more we focus on a problem, the more we perpetuate it. I think that's such important teaching.
Yes, yes. It's I like the story of the elephant.
Yes,
That he goes on to talk about, if you focus on one single thing, you're still trying to manipulate it.
yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He gave a story of there's a story of the sadhu who heard that everything was God. As he was walking down the street, a mad elephant came charging towards him. The mahout on top of the elephant cried, "Get out of the way!" The sadhu thought that as both he and the elephant were God, he would not be harmed. He ended up in the hospital, and when he complained to his guru, he was reminded that the mahout, was also God, and that God had told him to get out of the way. The sadhu had been focusing on the elephant instead of on the totality of the situation. And I put a star on this because I feel like we get hints like that all the time. We because everyone and everything is God. God is giving us intuitive impressions to get out of the way through voices, through things that are written, through all of these different ideas, and we just say, not today. We don't listen.
Yes. And really, ultimately, it's the ego that needs to get out of the way, the feeling of separation, of the thought of being a separate entity. And
Yes.
that's ultimately what needs to get out of the way. This is a story that the Shankaracharya told as well. So it's one I remember from many decades.
Yeah. This also brings up Rick's question. Rick always sends emails ahead of the meetings, and the first email was and he also puts it in the chat. Thank you for that, Rick. The value of this book, the book study, is the experiential nature. It suggests that I suggest that it's far more important to get a feel, sense, or resonance from what is addressed versus an intellectual grasp that is usually centered around the abstract idea, concept, or belief. The pure intellectual approach almost seems to come with subtle and hidden desire or expectation to get it, yes, and remember it for future gain. Somehow thought plays a very secondary role here, at least initially. I think this is what Francis refers to as in an earlier comment when he suggests that we simply forget about what transpired during the satsang. Yeah, wasn't that good? That was so good.
That's beautiful. But Francis, to be absolutely clear, Francis does say that there is no such thing as an intellectual approach or intellectual understanding, and that there is nothing wrong with using the mind. In fact, this teaching has this beautiful correspondence between using the power of the mind and allowing it to take you back to that presence, to pure being. But there's Francis gets a lot of questions from people who are anti-mind and anti-intellectual. And he says, no, an intellectual approach is what people call an intellectual approach is necessary. It's you have to, ultimately, you have to understand intellectually. You might not do that initially, but at some point you do. And there isn't really any separation, that understanding. There is no such thing as just an intellectual understanding. There is understanding, and that is all.
Yeah, that puts a difference. That puts a different kind of a curve on it for me too, because I have often seen people that are very intellectual have a hard time seeing or knowing as awareness. I see that they have a tough time with they stay so focused on the concepts that they miss the idea that's behind it.
Yes, exactly. They don't go far enough. What Francis is very good at doing is taking people further. So people like that, he's very skilled at taking them to the point where they see beyond the concepts. They see that concepts themselves are just models. And that's something he emphasizes quite a lot. But it's important. Models are equally important. It's the two together. It's the seeing, the understanding of what we are by being it, by resting there, by resting in silence, in presence. But at the same time, understanding from an intellectual, from a model point of view, which is, intellectual understanding is all models. Understanding it so that it can be communicated, not just to other people, but communicated to yourself. If you sort of fall off the surfboard into the water and feel yourself to be separate again, you need something. You need a model to help bring you back, a concept to help bring you back.
Yeah.
It may simply be the concept of be aware of being aware. It may be nothing more than that. But you need something. And sometimes people need different things. It's not just one thing that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're coming to the time where we can look at a question on page 229. Rick mentioned Francis discusses the importance of welcoming the totality of a situation versus a specific object or feeling. This sounds synonymous with not knowing. That is, objectivity knowing is a movement away from the totality. Would you agree with this?
I can see a little of what you're getting at, Rick, but I wouldn't quite put it like that. I certainly not synonymous with not knowing. Being present to the totality doesn't preclude allowing the division into objects. There's consciousness without the presence of objects, and there's consciousness with objects. There's but both of those are really states of the mind. But because consciousness is always present, whether there are objects present or not. What he's really talking about here, and the really important thing that he's trying to get across here, is not to focus on that which we don't like. Not to focus on it and try to get rid of it, to see it in its totality, and that's really the importance of those words. So he says we should be present to the totality of whatever arises in consciousness instead of focusing on something that we want to get rid of. Then we will become aware of the feeling of unhappiness and the dislike of the feeling, and perhaps the bird singing in the distance and all kinds of things. let all of that evolve by itself. So he's not saying, don't allow the mind, stop the mind, restrain the mind from dividing things into objects. He's not saying that. He's saying, don't try to put your hands on it. If you focus on one single thing, you're still trying to manipulate it. So you allow everything, and that everything includes that division into objects, but it's not focusing on one single object. And so we need to, in order to do that, we need to come from this sense of being that totality, of not being separate. And then we find that there is no real division of our perceptions into separate entities. All of those divisions, we can see a concept superimposed by mind, but we allow that superimposition to happen. We see that nothing has any independent existence. And then the uncomfortable feeling, which is what he's talking about, then just merges into everything else. It has no importance or no significance.
That causes me to think, when we use the word don't do this, wouldn't you want to allow that to occur also? The thing you're don'ting?
Yeah,
the thing you're not supposed to be doing?
Absolutely. It's that's so much part of Francis's teaching is allowing whatever is arising. It's fine. If ignorance is arising, that's okay. That's awareness's choice.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Rick, for that great question, and also for your dialogue, your answer, Jenny. That was awesome. Rosalind says, I find my mind seems hypnotized sometimes to a belief in the separate self, and when a satsang or an understanding breaks through from my experience, it is such a relief to have experience and intellect on the same trajectory. Yes.
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 Perfect. Yes.
High five. I agree. Yeah.
Yes, you just enjoy it. Yes.
Yeah, right. The word awakening from hypnosis of the mind seems so fitting. Yes, I think so.
Yes, it's from beliefs, really.
Yeah.
Yes, you could call it hypnosis, but it's, hypnosis implies something that's hard to escape from, and I don't think it's too hard to escape from. It's just a belief, and a belief is something we can choose to not believe anymore. We can see, that's a belief. That's okay. It's a belief I've got. Doesn't mean to say it's true.
Yeah. So before we run out of time, I'm just going to put it out there. We have almost 50 people here. If would you all like to meet in 1 week or 2 weeks and reconnect for our final meeting and give us a chance to pick out the most potent pieces, and we'll just spend that time together. 1 or 2 weeks. Just put it in the chat, 1 or a 2, and we'll take the majority as a vote. And I appreciate your involvement in that. And Rick says, don't feed the individual dragons. They will only grow and multiply. Rather, recede towards totality. Thank you, Rick. How would you like to end today's meeting, Jenny, other than counting the votes?
I would just like to read a little bit from Francis's last answer, because that was obviously, the question was obviously at the end of a retreat. So really, how can we recall the perfume of this experience? And he says something so beautiful. He says, take a bath in this light. turn your heart towards this resonance. Don't ask how, just do it. Do it again and again. Every time it seems you've lost it, just do it again until it becomes as natural as a young child looking back to see if his mother is still present watching him. This is a very simple gesture, going back to that which you love the most. From this place, there truly is nothing to do.
Nice. There truly is nothing to do. Just take me away. Here I go. All right. It looks like we're going to be back in 2 weeks. And thank you all for being here. Blessings to you. And it's just a great book study. It might be my favorite experientially. It's just been so much fun. And be sure, I'm going to be sending you an email to sign up for the Rupert Spira book study. It will start in November. Being Myself will be the first book. I got an early copy of it yesterday. I haven't seen it yet, but they sent me an early copy because I'll be hosting that study. And so thank you all for being here. I'll see you back in 2 weeks. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for your awesome questions. And we'll see you guys then. Have a great week. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Bill.